Welcome to the Pressure Beast Podcast.
No code lapse. We like it smooth and consistent.
All right. Welcome back to the Pressure Beast Podcast. I'm James. This quiet fella over here, that's Jason. He's feeling a little under the weather today. He's probably not going to talk too much, but we'll try and get a couple words out of him, one way or the other. Today, we're going to talk about something special. Not really. It's welding. We're talking about Section 9. We're just kind of the highlights of Section 9, the commonly missed items, the intricacies of it. So really, we're going to start out with the book layout. And this is common throughout ASME, kind of how they lay out their books. And if you open up the table of contents, Section 9, or any code book for that matter, ASME code book wise, the first technically code paragraphs that you get into are always going to start with something G. Section 8 div 1 is UG. Section 1 is PG. Same thing with Section 9, it's a QG. Q for the qualification, G for general, and it carries on throughout the book like that. QW, of course, is welding, QB is for brazing, so on. So anytime you see a code reference with Q, G, QW, QB, anything Q, and then another letter, you automatically know that's a Section 9 code paragraph. And conveniently, ASME lays them all out like that. So it makes it pretty easy to follow. So QG is general. So it doesn't matter if you're welding, if you're brazing, it doesn't matter what you do. Get something crawling up my leg. Doesn't matter what you do. It applies to you, right? So general's for everybody. So first paragraph I really want to talk about is QG 106. It's one of those common paragraphs that's missed during day-to-day operations of a shop, pre-audit reviews, joint reviews, things of that nature. That's QG 106. What QG 106 is pretty much saying that whoever is supervising the welding, not the actual welding itself, not the shop foreman, but we're talking about supervising the weld testing, and the one that signs off on the PQRs and the WPQs, they got to be qualified. They got to know what they're doing. You don't want anyone out there just signing shit off that they don't know what they're doing. Probably happens quite a bit, but we're trying to prevent that here. QG 106, what it says is whoever signs off on that welding documents and whoever witnesses the actual weld testing, because someone from that manufacturer has to witness the weld testing, whether it's a procedure test or whether it's a welder qualification. Isn't that right, Jace? Yeah. So what they're trying to prevent is you can't send a welder off to a lab and just have the lab test them and send you documentation back saying, yeah, he's good to go. You're supposed to make sure he is who did the welding. The labs, they can't be trusted. But so the qualification aspect of it is pretty much QG 106. It breaks it down into a couple things, right? So the person that's qualified has to be designated by the shop. You have to have some kind of letter, some kind of documentation showing that you designate Joe Blow to be a welding supervisor. With that designation, you have to keep some documents on hand, and those documents are pretty much what you write in your manual. As far as he has to have knowledge of the requirements of Section 9. He has to have knowledge of your organization quality control program, your QC manual, and then have knowledge on the scope and complexity of the welds. So if dude's only ever seen stick welding before and you're doing TIG in your shop, that's probably not going to qualify him for a welding supervisor, but that's all right. We can teach him. And then you have to maintain that record. It's always going to be asked for in joint views from here on out. It's not a new paragraph. It's been around for a while, but there's still a lot of shops that struggle with it. So if you have a code shop and you're welding qualifying Section 9, you should have someone in your shop designated as a welding supervisor per QG 106. Again, that applies for everyone, and they call it welding supervisor, but actually they don't call it welding supervisor. I call it welding supervisor. They call it personnel performance supervisor activities. That means it does still apply to brazing and plastic fusing. I don't know why they have plastic fusing in here, but no one really wants those vessels anyway. All right. So next paragraph or next item we're going to talk about is diameter limits. This gets a lot of people in trouble, a lot of shops in trouble. So table QW 452.3 is where you get your diameter limits for your welders. Now, you don't want a welder that's qualified on a 10-inch piece of pipe welding a little half-inch coupling full pin through the thickness of the coupling to a shell like a saddle-on nozzle. Probably not a good idea. So you have to prove that he's good enough to weld down to those small diameters. You don't want them, you know, mucking up the inside. You want that beautiful little wedding ring in there. So what it says, if you weld on something greater than 2 7/8, you're only qualified on 2 7/8 diameter and up. Now, diameter limits, they get a little goofy. We've talked about it before on the show, but I'll reiterate. So if you're welding a sit-on type nozzle, a pipe sitting onto a shell, not penetrating through the thickness of the shell, right? And you're welding full pins through the thickness of that pipe, you're incorporating the end of the pipe, end of the nozzle into your full pin weld, diameter limits apply. You got to be qualified if you want to weld anything smaller than 2 7/8. If you're doing a set-in nozzle where it's going through the head, through the shell, and you're welding through the thickness of the header shell, no one cares about diameter limits there. You rock on with it. You're good to do it. What? Oh, I thought you said something. Never mind. Now, if you weld on something smaller than 2 7/8, it qualifies you down to a 1-inch diameter. And we're talking about actual ODs here. We're not talking about MPS. So like a 3/4 inch coupling is 1.38 diameter. So if you were to weld a full pin through the coupling thickness, you would have to qualify for a small diameter under 2 7/8. Now, the trick is if you get under 1 inch, say you go to a 3/4 inch tubing that you're welding, butt welding together, something of that nature, you have to qualify for the diameter that you want to weld underneath 1 inch. If you want to weld a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 3/4, you got to qualify in all three of those. Right? Right. All right. So that's the gist of diameter limits. We can always get into that more later if y'all are interested in it. But it is a very common code violation that we would commonly find in shops. So make sure that you're within your diameter limits. You don't want to be caught handling something too small. But moving on, we are going to talk about positions, right? So along with diameter limits, you get positions for welders. Again, a very, very commonly screwed up part of Section 9. So with the positions, depending on whatever position you qualify in, it will give you, and this is table QW 461.9, it will give you the qualified positions that you can weld in. So let's just take, for example, you're welding a pipe, groove weld in a pipe in the 5G position. That qualifies you for plate and pipe over 24 inch. It qualifies you for flat, vertical, and overhead. Now, the funny thing with code and positions, good rule of thumb is 15 degrees changes your position. Anytime you're going from flat to about 15 degrees off of flat, you're talking about a vertical or horizontal weld at that point. So just make sure when you qualify your welders, you're qualifying them for what they're going to actually be doing. If dude's just welding it on flat, 1G plate, you don't want him laying on his back welding overhead. It's flat, but it's overhead. So you got to be careful with that. All right. And I think we're going to probably wrap it up on that one. We'll have a couple more segments on Section 9. It's a very important reference code. Just about everything references Section 9. You get into AWS and all those other codes, they reference you back to Section 9. So it's very important to get a good grasp of it. This is just a little teaser for you. We'll have a lot more episodes and go a lot more in depth when Jason here is a little more talkative. He's a little under the weather or something today. I don't quite know what's wrong with him. Make sure you hit that like and follow button, and you come back and see us, and we will see you next time.